It creates a space where we can see clearly when we take that time to pause. And it can be uncomfortable. It can feel like we don't have time to pause. It can feel like I don't even know what I would do with the pause if I were to take it, right? What am I supposed to do in this pause? Well, this is the work that is so important to get clear on, to being able to move forward, to you being able to feel fulfilled.
Do you wish you had control of your days, that you had a rhythm, but instead feel overwhelmed, scattered, and like there's never enough time? You're in the right place. I'm Danielle, a recovering workaholic, wife, and stay-at-home mom of 2 girls. I've learned how to reclaim my time and find purpose and freedom so I can be present with my kids and feel like myself again. Here, we embrace where we are, but we don't stay there. So if you're ready to trade the chaos for clarity, the guilt for grace, and the endless to-do list for aligned flow, grab the kiddos a snack and toss in that laundry because I know you're multitasking, and let's do this because your time, your purpose, and you matter.
Okay, mamas, we are going to talk today about pausing, about reflection, about the beauty of this and what this might look like and why it is so important for us to truly take the time to pause and reflect. I know that I used to resist this. I used to just go, right? There was no time for pausing. There was no room for reflection. Honestly, I didn't even like to get still and get clear with myself. I wasn't even really sure how to do that, right? Like it sounds really crazy to me now to say that, but pausing was not something that I was comfortable with in any way, shape, or form. I did not meditate. I did not really journal very much. I did not take the time to really reflect and to think about what it was that I wanted or why. And the reason I want to talk about this is because we've been spending the last few weeks going into JOMO. What JOMO is, the joy of missing out, the way that you are really able to experience that JOMO. We really broke it down and got clear on the steps that it takes. Like we talked about the 3 things that you needed. And I was thinking back on last week and how I mentioned that I wound up in the hospital. And that is what made me start pruning things out of my life, right? That is when I guess I realized or recognized that I needed to rest. I needed to hit that reset button, right? I needed to take a minute and pause and reflect and figure out what I wanted and why. And I did that, right? I did do that. I went through and I started to think about what was important to me. I was started to think about, okay, this is God's way of telling me that I need to stop. There was nothing wrong with me. I wound up in the hospital and there was nothing wrong with me, y'all. Like in terms of medical, explainable things that could have been wrong with me, that could have been causing me to have my heart rate be that high and my blood pressure to be that low. And for me to be so weak that I couldn't even stand up. I could not even stand. And it literally happened overnight. Like I was completely fine the night before, and the next morning I could not get up. I literally couldn't. And it was very alarming. But also when I was in the hospital and I had time to think about it, of why, what could have caused this, since the doctors have run literally every test. They wanted to keep me overnight. They were evaluating me and they literally found not one thing wrong with me. They found a little bit of low potassium. They gave me a potassium drip when I first got there, but they still, even after my potassium levels were normal, they were not comfortable with sending me home because I was not presenting correctly, right? It would just didn't make sense. And they wound up finding nothing. They wound up giving me nothing, right? There was nothing that they said I needed to change or do. But what I recognized while I was there is how much stress I was putting myself under. I was being all of the things to all of the people, and something needed to change. And so what I did was I decided to prune certain things out of my life, right? And so I did take the time to get still and get clear about that. However, once I did that, what I recognized after I was looking back on this is that I did prune those things out. But what happened after that wasn't good. It wasn't good. It wasn't the start of everything getting better. It actually got worse after that, right? Like, I'm not going to say it caused things to get worse, but that pruning out of things made me less busy, but it also made me more restless because it made me recognize that I still was unhappy, and that even though I was pruning things from my life, even though I had less to do and I felt less like I could breathe, right? Because I had so much going on prior to that, I couldn't breathe. I still was in a place where I was unhappy and I didn't understand it. Right. And so I want to read a quote here. This one comes from John Maxwell's law of reflection. And he says, learning to pause allows growth to catch up with you. Learning to pause allows growth to catch up with you. And then he goes on to quote Peter Drucker, who says, follow effective action with quiet reflection. From the quiet reflection will come even more effective action. So follow the effective action with quiet reflection. What I should have done after I pruned the things out of my life was to then go back and reflect on what that was causing or allowing or the reason that I was doing that, right? But what I actually did was I thought that the pruning was going to create this peace, right? It was going to create less chaos, and then everything was going to be able to be fixed after that, right? But what I didn't take the time to do until much later was that quiet reflection that came after the action. And if we take the time to do that reflection once we've done the action, then we are able to have even more effective action. I believe this to be true. John Maxwell says this is the law of reflection, that we are able to grow from that place. Once we take the action, then we need to reflect on it. So then we can go act again. And it's this cycle, right? It is this cycle that once we take action, we reflect, then we can take more action and reflect and take more action, right? Because sometimes we're going to take actions that weren't maybe the right actions, right? Maybe they weren't the right actions or at the right time. And if we don't reflect on that, then we won't know that. For me, I believe I took the right actions. However, it was the reflection piece that was missing from that of, okay, so why did this help and what can I do with this now? Because now that I had this more time, I still wasn't clear on what I wanted or why, right? And so I needed to do more reflection. I needed to take a look and see what was going on in my life. I have another quote that I want to share here. And this one is from Dove Seidman, who says, one of the simplest and most powerful tools we have as individuals is the ability to pause. Think about it. When you press pause on a machine, it stops. When we pause as humans, we begin. Pausing creates a space where one can see clearly. It does. It creates a space where we can see clearly when we take that time to pause. And it can be uncomfortable. It can feel like we don't have time to pause. It can feel like I don't even know what I would do with the pause if I were to take it, right? What am I supposed to do in this pause? Well, I've talked a lot about different things that you can do in this pause, but that's exactly what we do in my coaching. I literally have a step-by-step process to walk you through to help you figure out what it is that you need to focus on, what it is that you are good at, what strengths you have, what are the things that are important to you and to your family at this season of your life, right? And this is the work that is so important to be able to gain clarity on these things is so important to you being able to move forward, to you being able to feel fulfilled, to you being less likely to compare yourself in a negative way to others, right? To be more able to be clear on your boundaries, on your time, to more effectively spend your time because you know where you should be spending it, right? These are things that are so important. I have one last quote that I want to share here that is from Mark Twain. And Mark Twain says, whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it's time to pause and reflect. Whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, he says, because what happens? What happens so often to us, and this isn't just moms, but especially moms, is that we start conforming to or start following the ways of everyone else, the way that we think that things should be done, the way that we've heard or we've seen other people do things, right? Instead of reflecting, we've never been here before, right? If you are a mom and if you have 1, 2, or maybe even 3 kids who are littles, then you have never been in this position before. You have never walked this path, right? And everyone walks their own path. Everybody's experience is different, but when we start to be on the side of the majority, that is this time when it's probably time to pause and reflect and say, am I just doing this because everyone else says that I should, or everyone else has always done it this way, or this is what I've seen or heard that everyone else says that I'm supposed to do? But if you're sitting there unhappy and unfulfilled and stressed out and overwhelmed and scattered and just feeling like a hot mess, then maybe it's time for you to pause and reflect. It is time for you to figure out what it is for you. What is this supposed to look like for you? Because that is when you are going to be able to be fulfilled. That is when you are going to be able to be truly functioning as this mom that I know you want to be functioning as. Right now, when you are in that state of overwhelmed, of heightened, frustration, maybe of, feeling just like a hot mess and like you're pulled in a million directions, like you're super busy and you don't even know which way is up sometimes. That is when you're not clearly thinking, right? That is not when you feel like you have the time to pause, but it is when you need to pause the most. It's when you need to stop and be still the most because something is going on. And, like my body was telling me something was going on, that is an extreme case where, I believe that happened to me, but I have heard of it happening, maybe not to that degree, to a lot of other people. And even, like I said, when I came out of that, when I came home and I removed some things, I still wound up going downhill from there because I was still doing things the wrong way. I was still throwing darts, trying to figure out what was going to work for me and doing it the way that I had done it before, which didn't work, or the way that I thought that should be done, right? Instead of taking the time to figure out what was important to me, why it was important to me, and how I should be doing things for my family. So this is what I want for you so much, is for you to discover this on your own or with my help, right? I do this in my coaching, prioritizewithpurpose.com. You can find my website. You can find my coaching that I do there, prioritizewithpurpose.com. I would love to help you with this because you're not going to be able to just like flip a switch and have JOMO all of a sudden, right? Experience this joy of missing out. You are not going to be able to do that right away. And this pause and reflection is super key to being able to do that. It's key to being able to do that foundational work, but then it's key to being able to sustain that JOMO in your life. Okay. So I'm going to end with that and I'll meet you right back here on Thursday.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode, Mama. If so, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and then hit share and send this to a mom who needs this in her day. I'll meet you right here on Thursday. Keep smiling, y'all.